Hello again, everybody. This is Dan Clouser, and welcome back to the Journey of My Mother's Son podcast. Today I'm joined with Teri Brown, who's an author, podcaster, and we're going to be talking a little bit about her most recent adventure. I guess not her most recent adventure, but her most recent book, which talks about a incredible adventure called 10 Little Rules for a Double-Butted Adventure. And we'll get into what that actually means here in a little bit. So, Teri, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. Looking forward to the conversation. Before we get started, though, just introduce yourself in your own words. Who is Teri Brown?
Yeah, so I'm an author, a podcaster, a public speaker, a mom, a grandma, yeah, just a reader, an avid reader, and a beach bum. So you can't forget the beach bum part. I love that.
Yeah, I've been a beach bum for the past month, and that's it's a good spot to be in for sure.
Oh, there's something about the waves and the salt air, and if that doesn't take away your troubles, then you really need some help.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And funny thing is, as I was growing up, I was never a huge fan of the beach, but as I've gotten older, that has most definitely changed
Yeah,
here, especially since we've been
absolutely.
traveling full time. I mean, anytime we can get into a beach town, it's it's good for the soul for sure. So we're only like
Absolutely.
probably less than a quarter mile from the Gulf right here, and
Oh, how
and
lovely.
just been riding our bikes on the beach just about every day and all kinds of stuff. So it's been fun. So definitely can relate to the beach bum aspect of what you do. But let's talk a little bit. Let's get right into this thing and talk a little bit about your most recent book. So, people are probably wondering when they hear that title, Double Butted Adventure. So
Right.
what was this double butted adventure that you're talking about in this book?
So my husband and I rode a tandem bicycle. That's a two-seater bicycle from the coast of Oregon to Washington, D.C., which is 3,102 miles. And that trip was an adventure long in the making for my husband. He had wanted to do it since 1976. It was something I needed to do to heal from an emotionally abusive relationship that I had been in for 14 years. And along the way, we also decided to raise money for Toys for Tots. And so we raised quite a bit of money that year to buy bicycles for kids. And so that's kind of what the adventure encompassed is, a lifelong dream, a healing of me, and a raising of funds for a great cause.
Yeah, that's awesome. So the lifelong dream for your husband, was it to do it on a tandem bike or it was just a
Just to
bike at that
do
point?
it.
Okay. So
Yes.
at
So
what
in
point did he convince
1976,
you? Or well, go ahead. You
while
were
we were
starting to tell
dating,
another story. Okay, okay.
yeah, no, so in 1976, a group of college students rode across the United States as part of the bicentennial. It got written up probably in Sports Illustrated or something along that line. He saw it, but he was in the military, and it isn't like he could just say to his sergeant, "Hey, I'm taking 3 months off." So that kind of jump started in his mind, "Hey, I really would love to do this idea of riding across." And he was a marathon runner and triathloner and did age uh, bicycle racing so that, in his age group. And he was that adventure guy. And then we started dating. And I'm not adventurous. Like for me, outdoors, and I love outdoors, but it's more like let's walk along the beach and pick up shells. So a very different thing. And he brought up the fact that he wanted to do this right across the United States. And I had been contemplating wanting a big adventure. I wanted to do something big and bold because I had been in this horrible relationship for 14 years and I felt less than. I just didn't feel like I had anything left or didn't feel like anyone thought that I did. And I wanted to do something that everyone said, wow, there's no way she can do that. And then I wanted to do it. Right. And so when he brought up riding across the United States on a bicycle, I thought, I've not been on a bike in 40 years. This would be an adventure. And so I asked him, is it something you're going to talk about until the day you die, or are you going to do it? And he said, no, I really want to do it. And I said, count me in. And then before long, we decided that the tandem was the best way for us to go. So,
That's very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I've always had this fascination of people that bike across the country, hike across the country, walk across the country. Musician by the name of Mike Posner back in I think 2019. walked from Asbury Park, New Jersey to, I believe it was Santa Monica, California. Started literally with his feet in the Atlantic Ocean and
And finished
walked
with
and
his feet in the
finished feet
Pacific.
in the
Yep.
Pacific.
Yeah.
Um, I did a podcast probably about a year ago with Matt and Grace Grooms, who had hiked the East Coast Greenway Trail from Maine to Key West. And there's always been this fascination, which is one of the reasons why I'm doing a little bit of a combination of both these things in September, of a little bit of hiking and a little bit of biking on a beach cruiser down the East Coast Greenway Trail from Pennsylvania to Melbourne, Florida. So when you reached out about being on the show, I was like, this is definitely going to be a great conversation. So, tell me a little bit, when you guys decided to do the tandem, and then before we started recording, you talked about how, you had this thing all mapped out exactly where you're
Oh,
going
I
to
did.
be, start day one, which I'm doing the same thing, but realizing that there's a lot of fluidity in that because, talking with Matt and Grace since they did it, they also said, look, come up with a plan, but realize that plan can be thrown. And being full-time RVers, that's kind of what our deal is anyway. Like we have a plan, but we also know that that plan can change on any given moment. So, you know, how many miles did you like plan to bike each day, and then
Yeah.
how did it work out? And were there frustrations at first when the plan didn't go the way you wanted it to? And how long did it take to accept to be like, okay, the plan is no plan. The plan is we'll figure it
Right.
out.
So I am a list maker. I am a planner. It makes me feel very good about life to know what's going to happen next. And so I've always been a planner. So I sat at the kitchen table and came up with a plan. I knew exactly where we were stopping every day. I knew where we were going to spend the night. I had the addresses of all the campgrounds. I had it all. I knew what we were doing. I knew. I had us going 60 miles a day. I had us going 60 miles a day because all of the blogs that I read, people were going 60 miles a day. What I didn't really think about was they were going 60 miles a day on a single bicycle, and we were going on a tandem bicycle. And over hills, a tandem is very slow. Especially you've got the weight of two people, plus it was fully loaded. We were pulling a trailer that had all our camping gear in it. And so it was a big adventure. But anyway, I had it all planned out, knew exactly how we were doing and was ready to go. And on day one, we did not make 60 miles. We didn't come close. It was like, okay, not a problem. And I split things up a little bit, and we start out on day two, which we also didn't make. And on day three, I threw it away. And I realized that it was senseless because it just made me feel like we were failing when we weren't. We were still moving forward. And that was the point. And if it took us 2 months or if it took us 3.5 months, it wasn't going to matter. The point was, did we get across the United States? Because that was the goal. And so I had to kind of shed that. And I shed it quickly, but it took a long time to feel comfortable to me because that meant I kept saying, well, we don't have a plan. We don't have a plan. And my husband said, we do have a plan. We're going from Astoria, Oregon to Washington, D.C. We're now working not on the actual plan and goal. We're working on logistics. He said logistics change. You have to be able to change logistics. And it just took a long time for me to be comfortable with that idea
Yeah.
because I'd like a list that I could cross things out and say, look at what I accomplished. And but I learned we would at the end of a day, we would get out our map, we would look at right, where can we stop? And we would make two or three possibilities. And as we're arriving to one, we ask ourselves, okay, we could stop here for the day. The next place is 9 miles from here. Do we have another 9 miles? If the answer was yes, then we went on. Once you get to that place, it's like, okay, the next place is 14 miles from here. And it was like, I think I might be done. I don't know that I have 14 miles. That's where we'll stop. And so you just
Yeah.
had to, and the thing is it wasn't even just how you felt. It was, is the wind blowing against you today? What's the weather like? Is it hot? Is it raining? Have you had to hide from a hailstorm, which we did? Um, you know, all of those things. How well did you sleep the night before? How many miles did you go yesterday? Because if you had a light day yesterday, you might be able to go more today. But if you had a heavy day yesterday, today might be, you know, Did your breakfast sit well? All of those things. And you can't predict that
Right.
even the night before because you don't know what's going to come up. And when we were around the Great Lakes, you would look at the weather that morning and everything looked great. And at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you'd see these huge thunderstorm clouds coming up out of nowhere because of the lake effect
Right.
storms that would happen. So you couldn't even that morning, you think you have a beautiful day, and by noon, you realize we're going to have to settle down pretty soon because of this weather event that's coming up. And so everything had to be fluid. And it taught me a lot about who I really am in the inside because I am not an uber fluid kind of person, but it taught me that I can do it when I need to.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm not going to die. I will live through it.
Yeah, but those are definitely all factors that you have to, have to
Right.
put into play when you're doing something like that, you know. Now,
And
were
it's
there
not things you can predict.
No, no, not at all. Not at all.
No.
I mean, the weathermen don't know what's going to happen with the weather on a daily
Any given
basis,
day.
yet alone you
Exactly.
trying to plan around it. I mean, we've that's one of the things we've grasped. I mean, we're always looking at the weather and we always know like, wait, it's raining. We just looked an hour ago. It's not supposed to
It
rain.
said it was
Like, oh,
sunny.
it
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so so how long did it take you? How long did the entire trip take you guys?
So we rode for 72 days, but we were out there for just a little over 3 months
Okay.
because there are days that you just don't ride.
Right.
Either the weather is horrible, and we had a 3 day stay in um, Bemidji, Minnesota, where we stayed for 3 days because there were these horrible storms and they just came one after the other. There were 60-mile-an-hour straight line winds. These are not the kinds of things you want to be on a bicycle or even in a tent. So we holed up in a hotel and just waited them out until that had all passed through. There are days you're just exhausted and you say, okay, we've got to take a health day because if not, we're going to drop on the side of the road and we're not going to make it the whole way across the United States. So we started, I believe it was the 29th of June and arrived in DC on the 3rd of October.
Okay. Okay. So what was the longest day that you guys rode mileage wise?
I think it was 90 plus. I'm
Okay.
thinking 92 or 93. I don't remember. It was a day in which the wind was behind us and was blowing us down a very straight road where I could have opened my shirt and used it as a sail. I mean, it was just a beautiful day, and we just went and went and went, and it was great.
Yeah.
Our smallest day was 11 miles,
Okay. All right.
where we had had a horrible night the night before, and at the about 9 mile mark, my husband said, I am doing badly. I'm not going to do much more. And it was like, well, there's a hotel a mile up the road. We're going to stop there.
Yeah.
And that was it. It's like, okay, we're done. And you have to really listen to your body when you're doing this thing. You can, you can push beyond what you think you can do every now and then, but you can't do it every day consistently, day after day after day, because you'll run out,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
No doubt about that. So um so it was just the two of you. You didn't have a
Yeah.
pilot car, so you were
No
pulling a
pilot
wagon
car,
with your
pulling,
supplies. So
yep.
what was the weight that you guys were carrying in that wagon on this bike?
Oh, so when we started or when we finished? Okay.
Yeah, I want to
So,
know both actually.
okay. So about, I don't even really know how much was in it when we finished. I know that we sent 40 pounds home.
Okay.
So we were about 5 days in. I woke up. My husband was already awake and he was staring at me. And as soon as I opened my eyes, he said, I've made an error in judgment. And I thought, well, then we're dead because he's the adventure guy, right?
Right.
He's the cyclist. He's this person. And if he's made an error in judgment, he said, we're carrying too much weight. I have some things I can send home. Is there anything you can send home? Well, let me tell you, fear gets rid of 20 pounds. And we got rid of 20 pounds of stuff. And about a week later, he just very casually said a few more things that I don't think that I need. And I said, me too. And we got rid of another 20 pounds. So I thought that I was packing super light. And I still managed to get rid of, between the two of us, 40 pounds of stuff.
Yeah.
And it was things that you realize if I've not used it in 2 weeks, it isn't necessary. I also had a fantasy in my mind that when we got to campgrounds, that I would be doing gourmet camping cooking
Huh.
and that we would be having these luscious meals and I had all these spices and these things. And it turns out that if you can't cook it in 5 minutes in one pot, I was not interested. And so a lot of cooking things went, a lot of extra clothing that I just realized, I'm wearing one outfit and I need one clean. I don't need six different bicycling attire. I need two.
Right.
And I don't need three different things to wear in a campground. I need one. And I just don't need all of this extra stuff. And I just got rid of it. It was like even ounces mattered at that point. It was like, okay, I had a little makeup bag, little, just like the bare. And I thought, you know what? If people don't like to see me without makeup, then they shouldn't look. And I sent that back. I mean, lots of things just didn't matter after a while. So, yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Absolutely love that. So when you started out on this adventure, you said it was a little bit of a healing process for you, but did you
Yeah.
start it with the intention of writing about it afterwards?
I wrote a blog the whole way. And that was my intention, that I was going to write a blog. But when I got home and read the blog from the perspective of someone reading what we had done, I realized that there were a lot of lessons that I had learned about life along the way. And I thought, you know what? That's the book that I want to write. I don't want to write just a straightforward day by day. I've done that. That's on the blog. And for anyone who wants to see that, the blog is on my website. So, I mean, it's still there. You can go and you can read every single day. This was more my reflection of what did I learn about life, myself, other people, as I rode across the United States. And so that's where this came from. So I think the intention was to always make sure that I had documented it well because I am a writer and I do like the idea of having things written down. But prior to going on the trip, I wasn't an author. When we finished up the trip, as we're coming into DC, and I realized that we made it, that I made it. A non-athletic woman had made it across the United States on this tandem bicycle. I thought, I can do anything. It's a matter of what do I want to do? And I thought, I want to be an author. It's what I've wanted for a long time. And that's when my author journey began. And I think when I went back and read the blog with that in mind is when I realized that I had a book.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. It's funny how we find inspiration sometimes, like what
Yeah,
the things are that get that flowing. Like it's in
yeah.
there, but like what is it that unlocks it? So what
Exactly. I tell people all the time that what's inside of you, you have everything you need inside of you. It's buried. You don't
yeah.
know how to get at it. Um, you know, Life has dumped on top of it and you can't even find it anymore. But it's all there. It's just a matter of clearing out the junk and figuring out how to access it.
Yeah. What were some of the biggest surprises to you during that journey across the country?
Oh, so we went during the summer of 2020. So that's COVID summer. It was political unrest summer. If you watched the news, you would have said that the whole world was going to hell in a handbasket. It was going to, it was horrible. We actually had people tell us that we shouldn't go, not because of COVID, but because we wouldn't be safe out on a bicycle riding through the United States. My husband is a 25-year Marine veteran. And so we had a small flag that we flew on the back of our trailer, and he was told not to do that. And he said, "Well, if I can't fly the flag for the country that I fought for 25 years, then there is something really wrong with this country." And so, of course, we did fly it because there's no way he wouldn't have. But what we found was just opposite of anything that you see in the news. We found loving, wonderful, giving people who, despite COVID and the fear, the real fear, because you figure this was months before a vaccine came out. This was still at the point where we're not sure how it's transmitting and all of the fear factor, right? Despite all of that, people helped us when we needed help. People were kind. People found ways to communicate with us and be part of what we were doing in whatever way they could. I think that was the most surprising to me. And since then, although I do pay attention to the news, I pay attention to it in very small doses.
Yeah.
I read headlines first thing in the morning, um, and I will read maybe one or two news stories during the day if something really captures my attention, and that's it. I do not keep news on 24/7. I do because I realized that although those things are happening, it isn't the whole world.
Yeah.
It's a very small segment. And the news doesn't say things like Terry and Bruce had a wonderful trip today. They went 32 miles and met some wonderful people at a gas
Right.
station.
Right.
Like that doesn't ever make the news, right? The only way that's going to make the news is if the people in the gas station shot us.
Right.
And so I think that it made me really realize that despite differences between people, that we're more alike than we are different, and that we all want very similar things in life. We want to be happy, we want to be healthy, we want to keep a roof over our heads, we want our family together, we want love, we want acceptance. Those are the things that we want. We may go about them differently, but generally speaking, that's what people want.
Yeah.
And
So
when we were out there, we found that. Yeah.
so true. So true. I mean, we started our RV journey in August of 2020. We were
Yeah.
planning on doing it prior to COVID. We actually ended up buying our RV the day the governor of Pennsylvania was, issuing the shutdown orders
Right.
for the state, and so we ended up kind of just having it sit in our yard for a while. But yeah, that was one of the most incredible things we found, and still find today, is that, you know, generally, if you actually sit down and take the time to have a conversation with someone, whether they look like you, whether you think, whether you put your own prejudice on them or not, like if you actually sit down and have a conversation with them, you're going to find out exactly what you just said. Like
Yeah.
they want the same things that you want. They really do. So like just,
Yeah.
turn the news off, have conversations with people, and
Absolutely.
find a, you're going to have a whole different outlook on the world, you
Well,
know?
and you'll just be much happier.
Yeah.
The news stresses me out,
Yeah.
and makes me angry, and then I start feeling angry at people, like groups of people, and I realize it's because that's what that news segment intended to do. It
Yes.
intended to incite me against a group, and it doesn't matter. I actually did a TEDx talk that kind of talked about this, and one of the things that I bring up is that as you get to know someone in a group that you're afraid of in whatever manner, you say to yourself, okay, well, that's an exception to the rule. But once you've met 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 or 15 people, now you have to change your rule,
Yep.
right? You can't keep saying, well, the people in this group. And so in my talk, I used blonde-headed authors just because nobody really is afraid of blonde-headed authors. But you hate authors who are blonde. And then you meet me and you like me and I'm an exception to your rule. But if you meet 10 of me, you're going to have to change your rule because you can't keep saying, I hate blonde authors and have 15 of them that are your friends.
Right.
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 And so you have to figure that out. And that's one of the things that we did going across the United States. We would be talking to people who were different ethnicities, different political affiliations, different sexual orientations, different religions, different socioeconomic status. And it didn't matter. We we found a way to connect with every single person that we talked to.
Yeah.
And I think part of it was we were very open to that. But if you can be open to that, then you're going to go out in the world and you're going to find that, are there bad people? Of course there are,
Yes.
but they're not everybody.
Right.
And they're far fewer than the world would have you believe.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. No
get
doubt
off my
about that.
soapbox.
No, I love it. I love it. And it's so true.
Yeah.
If you just are out there looking for the good, you're going to find it,
Yeah.
and taking
Yeah.
that time to get to know people and understand their perspective, you know, it just gives you a different perspective, it's
Absolutely.
incredible. So you said you weren't an author before you did the ride across America. Um, and this book just came out in February. So what
Right.
were um what were your first books then after
Okay.
the ride? And
So
then why didn't you write about the ride immediately?
So my first three, they came out in January of 22, January of 23, and January of 24, and they're three different historical fiction, unrelated to one another. Um, I I think the reason that I didn't write immediately about my ride is I was still assimilating. Like, that's a lot. That's 3,102 miles of trying to figure out, like, how do you distill that down in a way that makes sense? Then once I did and I got it written down, I was looking for the right home. Like I could self-publish. That's a little harder to get people to notice it. I had a publisher that did my historical fiction, and it's not that they don't have nonfiction, but they don't have many. And I just felt like it wasn't the right place. And then I met a woman who has a publishing company, and it's called 10 Little Rules.
Hmm.
And it was like, oh my gosh, that fits. Because although I didn't have 10 little rules, I had actually more than that. I knew that I could distill it down to 10. And her books are people who've done something in life and want to kind of share their experience about it. And I thought, this is where my book belongs. And so as soon as I met her, it was like, okay, now I can finish this book because now I have purpose. I know what else I'm doing with it. I got to a point with it. I just I didn't know where it was going to land. And you don't want to do tons and tons of editing on it and then find out that you're going to have to redo everything because it doesn't quite fit
Right.
yeah,
Yeah. I love that. So, did you find the healing that you sought when you first started the
yeah.
ride?
Absolutely. My husband told everyone that the person who started the ride was not the person who finished the ride. Um, I, there are a lot of, when you're in an abusive relationship like that, you don't feel good about yourself. You don't feel that you are capable, competent. All of the things that you've been told, you begin to internalize, even if you don't want to believe it, even if you tell yourself you don't believe it, it's that voice that keeps coming in. So when you go to try something new, you hear you're not capable, you can't do that, you're no good, all those things. And as you're writing, you don't have anything else to do. I mean, that's all we did. We rode and I wrote my blog. And other than the things to do with writing and writing my blog, we didn't do anything else for 3 months. And so you're writing and you have time to think, and those thoughts would come up, and you have a way of being able to look at them and say, but that's not true. Look at me. I'm out here accomplishing something really hard that people say is not even really possible. Like, how are you doing this? I could never do that. And you're doing it. And so I was able to take a lot of those, I don't know, the negative self-talk that had been, shoved in my head for so long, and I found a way to put it away in a box and just say, this is not true. These things are not true because look at what I've done. And now today, saying that I never get that feeling because every now and then it does pop up. I think all people have that every now and then where you
Right.
just feel like, oh, I'm in over my head. But I'm able to look at it objectively now. I'll feel it come up and I'll think, huh, wonder where that came from. And I acknowledge it for what it is, and then I can put it away because I no longer believe it. I can believe it momentarily, like, something big happens and oh, and then when I stop and say, okay, let's look at this, I can put it away. I realize it's not the truth about who I am.
Yeah.
So no, it definitely healed me. And I recommend for anybody who is in a spot where they're trying to figure out, like their next phase in life. You don't have to go on a huge adventure like 3,000 miles, but do something outside the box, something that takes you outside of your comfort zone. And when you're able to accomplish that, you'll realize what you have inside. And so it can be something like learning to watercolor. I don't mean it has to be a big physical adventure, but something, even something like, I've always wanted to change jobs, and now would be a good time, but I'm really afraid to do it. You know, if you do it, then you realize a lot about yourself in that change. And so this book are rules that helped me navigate doing something well outside my box. So even if you're not a bicyclist or someone who wants to do a big adventure, do you want to live adventurously? In other words, do you want to get outside of yourself and do things that are a little bigger than things that you've done in the past? And if so, I'm hoping that this book will at least give you like a starting point of things that you can do that'll be helpful.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely love that. So what what made you choose Astoria, Oregon and Washington, D.C.? What was there anything behind,
Yeah.
that being the start and finish destination?
So there is a it's called adventure cycling, and they have cycle maps that help people know like if they want to go different places. One of the big ones is what they call the Northern Tier, and it starts in Washington State and it goes across. And I read a blog of some couple that was doing it on single bikes, and the first week they had 5 mountain passes, big, ginormous mountain passes. And I began to dread it. And so I talked with, no, it was like, there's no way. I mean, we live in the flats of North Carolina. Okay. Like mountain ranges were just unbelievable. So I talked with Bruce about it and we began looking at other possibilities. And when you start in Astoria, you then go through like Portland, Oregon, and down through that valley, and then where you cross over the Rockies is Lolo Pass, and that is the shortest pass over the Rockies. Now it is still very high,
Okay.
but it's one of the shortest. And we decided that we weren't trying to prove that we could take 18 mountain passes in our first month. That wasn't the point. The point was, can we make it from one side to the other side? So that's why we started there. And then once we crossed the Rockies, we actually did veer up north and take that northern tier because it's very pretty and cooler and quieter, and that's what we wanted. Washington, D.C., we had originally said we were going coast to coast. That's what, when we started planning, we said we were going coast to coast and we were going to dip our wheel in the Pacific, which we did. And then we were going to dip our front wheel in the Atlantic. And then when COVID hit, we made some different plans just because of we were having to get a later start. We had planned to start in May. That would have given us a lot longer. As it was, we got to DC in October. It's we just needed to be able to stop. And so we stopped in DC at the Marine Corps Memorial. As I said, my husband was a 25-year Marine vet. And we were raising money for Toys for Tots, which is a Marine um, charity. And so we just thought that that was a very fitting place to end.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah,
Very cool. Oh man, I could go on and on with this conversation, but we do have to start to wrap things up. But is there anything that we
that's quite all right.
missed that you think would be important to the listeners before we sign off?
Um, I think the only thing that we didn't talk about, and it's going to be a little bit of a shock to you, so hold on and you'll be okay, I'm sure. My husband passed away in January.
Sorry to hear
He
that.
was diagnosed with glioblastoma in June of 22 and was told he would have about 8 months, and he lived for 31 because he's a Marine, and Marines, they don't give up. Um, and so the thing that I want to mention to people is like, don't have a bucket list. Don't have
Yeah.
that list of things that you hope to do someday because you're not guaranteed that someday. Bruce, other than the glioblastoma, was an extremely healthy man. No signs, no evidence of any issues. He had a little bit of some skeletal problems from 25 years in the military, his hips and knees. And in terms of his ability to get out and do, he was 12 years older than me and he outdid me all the time. He was very in shape and loved life and had a lot of things he, imagined we were going to do. And then he was given this horrible diagnosis. And it was a diagnosis with zero hope. Glioblastoma is an incurable brain cancer.
Right.
And so so I think that would be the thing that I tell people is if you have something on a bucket list, look at it. Is it something you really want? If so, today, right now, think about what's one thing you can do to move toward accomplishing that thing. And if you don't feel, I really don't want to, then take that thing off your bucket list. It's not worth being there because you don't want to leave this earth with a list of things that you wish that you should have, could have, would have done.
Yeah.
So
I love that, man.
that's the one thing.
That is a great nugget for people. I mean, because again, everybody thinks that tomorrow's guaranteed. I mean,
And it's
they all
not.
do, and it is absolutely is not. So I love that
Absolutely. It
you brought
absolutely
that
is
up.
not. And the thing is that why wait? There are things you want to accomplish. Why wait?
Yep.
There's no better time than now. Go ahead and get started.
Yeah.
My grandfather once said, "Do you know when the best time to plant a fruit tree is? 20 years ago.
Yeah.
When's the next best time? Today."
Today. Yeah.
Right? Because you don't get fruit from a fruit tree for quite some time after planting it. And so the best time to plant it was, long ago. And so that was his point is, do it now.
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt
So,
about that. No doubt about
yeah.
that. Just one last question I want to ask you
Yeah.
before I get to my final question. You said that when you got into DC, there was a sense of astonishment, accomplishment of something that,
Yeah.
you never thought you'd do. Has there been anything since then that you've done that you never thought you would do?
Yeah. Yeah. I speak in public. I was terrified of public speaking. And now I find immense joy in it. I get so pumped up that I can't sleep if I do it too late at night. Like um, so that, um, yeah, writing novels. I've won some awards. Like, how amazing is that? I started a podcast. Um, so I talk with other authors on Online for Authors, which is a really cool thing. I've written a children's book that's going to be coming out this spring. Yeah. And I want to keep doing that. That's what I hope that I really learned from all of this is that there's nothing stopping me. And if there's something that I want to do, then let's go do it. And what's the worst thing that can happen? I fail at it. Okay.
I love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely love it. So, Terry, where can people find you at if they want to reach out to you, if they want to get copies of any of your books? How do they find Terry online?
The best place is to go to my website, which is my name, Teri M. Brown, and that's Terry with one R. So TERI Brown.com. There you can find all of my books. You can see all my social media icons. So just click those, it'll take you right to me. I have a newsletter I'd love for you to join. My podcast is there. And I even just have a contact me page if you just wanted to reach out and ask me a question. And I always try to get back with people who reach out to me.
Very cool. Very cool. So, Terry, that brings us to our final question. As you know, the subtitle of the podcast is Many Little People in Many Little Places, which comes from the opening lyrics of a Michael Franti song, Gloria, which go, when many little people in many little places do many little things and the whole world changes. What's one of the little things that Terry does on a daily basis to make the world a little bit better place?
I try to do an act of service every day, even if it's something tiny. Like it doesn't have to, I don't mean that I'm, out collecting money or whatever, but an act of service, sometimes that could be as simple as sending an email to someone that lets them know that I appreciate them, or opening up the door for someone that you see struggling with, a child and bags or whatever. The other day I was in a post office and there was an older woman and she had 3 packages in a bag, and she goes up to the front, and the counter is like up to here on her, up to her chin, and she goes to lift that bag and she's struggling to lift the bag. And without thinking, I just went over and grabbed the bag and got it up on the counter for her. Those kinds of things, because I think if we were all doing that, if we were all opened our eyes just a little bit to the world around us and found the tiniest little things, if everyone's doing it, all those tiny things become something really huge.
Yeah, I love that. Great answer. Absolutely great answer. Terry, really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today. It was a great conversation. Wish you nothing but the best of luck moving forward.
Thank you.
For those out there listening, be sure to check out my other podcasts and blogs at journeymymotherson.com. While you're there, check out our Pay It Forward program where you can buy a copy of one of my books, and Sandy and I will donate it to a little local library somewhere along the line in our travels. And again, Terry, thank you so much. It was a great conversation. Love to connect with you as I'm making my trek down the East Coast this fall.
Absolutely, absolutely, and good luck with that. And I'm super excited as you come down, when you get through into Carolinas, you reach out to me.
Absolutely, I will.
Absolutely.
I will.
All right.
All right. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you.